Oh, jumped in right away. Hey everybody, how you doing today? Hope you're having an amazing day today, and I'm very excited. We're going to be diving into an awesome topic today about becoming more of a consistent action taker in your life. This is a critical thing. No surprise. A lot of the people that I get to be in discussion with, um, you know, they 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 desire to be more consistent as action takers. That didn't even sound right, but they desire more consistency. They desire an ability to take more action because a lot of people out in the world just feel like avoidance and procrastination are two things that just plague them, really hold them back from creating the life that they want. So we're going to be diving into this topic today a bit more with the goal of really giving you some steps to really take your ability to take action to the next level. I'm just going to take a look at a couple settings here, and then we will start to dive in. Okay, change that there, and we are good. Okay, so what else do I want to say here before we dive in? Couple things. Um, so the first one really being that yeah, let me start here. So this area is so important that I've actually included it in the Masculine Leader. So the Masculine Leader is a 3-month group coaching program that I've created for men, which is really a structure to support a man, a nice guy, to become more of an authentic, confident leader in their relationships and in their career. And this area is one that is inevitably one that, as a leader, we want to tackle. So this is really powerful work that we're going to be doing in the Masculine Leader. If that's something that you're interested in finding out more about, come back and check out the video afterwards, because I'll put a link to a video that talks more about that program, and I'll also share a document that's going to have more information about the program as well. And if you're just like, hey, I'm raising my hand, I'm interested, just say that you're interested in the comments, and I'll reach out to you. So the thing that I really want to speak about first is what are we up to in this conversation? What are we looking to create? So at the core, we really want to have a conversation around integrity. And simply being that, notice how procrastination and avoidance makes you feel about integrity. As you think about the things that maybe you've committed to and you fell off, or the areas of your life where you just feel like you're out of integrity, what is that impact on you? What does that feel like, as you reflect on that? When I think of myself, let's talk about health and fitness. Right now, I feel out of integrity in this area. There was once a time that I was, in incredible shape, and I can still do certain things really well, but really, at this point, I'm carrying a little bit of extra weight, and I see the gap. So there's an integrity leak there, right? There's a leak of my integrity, and I could start to look at other areas of life where this shows up as well. Maybe some that are not as apparent as others. And this is going to be a part of our discussion that, we're going to be diving into, because what we're really up to here as leaders is really establishing strong integrity, that what we speak, our word matters. The things that we put out into the world, the things that we say that we're going to do, we actually are in integrity with. So I want that to really create a foundation of the conversation that we're going to have. Yeah, and we'll go from there. So the well, and let's even back up a little bit, because notice, what does it feel like to avoid the things that you need to be doing in life? Maybe there's a conversation that you need to have. Maybe there's a stand that you need to take in your relationship. Maybe there's a stand that you need to take in your career. Or, one that showed up in a conversation this week is like, you have a knowing that you are a leader. You full out know that, like, your capacity to lead is at a much higher level, and yet the steps to actually create that, you're not pursuing. And so maybe somebody else who is less skilled than you has the position ahead of you, and there's an impact of that. So really, as just a baseline, we really do want to be present to what is the impact that both avoidance and procrastination has in our life. Again, not from a place of judging ourselves or making ourselves feel wrong, but really just connecting to like, this matters. It really matters, that we bring these areas back into an integrity, back into alignment with who we're being in the world. So, with that, the first place that I want to just look at is taking small steps. And this sounds basic, but really, as you reflect on this, how often, when you're wanting to change things about your life, do you do you allow yourself just to tackle one area? Most people, I would say, there's sort of two camps. One camp is like, I'm not focusing on anything in my life. I'm sort of just letting life happen to me. So there's like that side of it. And then there's the side of like, oh my God, my life sucks. I need to change everything. And so what we really, this first step is really getting clear on like, what would be the most important area for me to tackle right now? If I was wanting to come into integrity, what would really matter? And so this is the place that I would recommend starting with, is like, what is that key area? What is the big area that if you start to put focus there, it's going to have an impact on all the other areas? We'll start there. So, when I think of my journey, the big area for me was to start to bring leadership into my marriage. And um, by starting to do simple things like addressing my needs, having the conversations that needed to be had, standing for what I want, or addressing bad behaviors, that had a ripple effect in other areas of life. So as I stepped into my career and was having conversations with my boss or conversations with other employees, by taking that step in my marriage, I was able to more easily take that step, um, in these other areas of life. And here's the thing. It doesn't always necessarily have to be the big area. I know that that's sort of counterintuitive to what I just shared. The idea here is that we're looking to build a muscle. So, if you're finding like, hey, the area that I really want to step into is leadership in my marriage or my relationship, but I'm honestly a little bit scared. That kind of feels far off in the distance. Well, then we want to look at, okay, well, what might be the area to start to practice in? If you're not practicing at all, well, then let's find the area that will be, will kind of start this catalyst in occurring. We'll start sort of getting this moving forward. So this is really the first place to look at, is taking small steps, taking that one step at a time. So start to look at your life and determine like, okay, what would really matter for me to change? What would matter for me to really put some focus on in making a difference in my life and the lives of others? Maybe it is your health and fitness. Maybe it is your relationship. Maybe it's your career. Maybe it's a hobby. You're going to have to come to a place of choosing which area it's going to be. But the opportunity here is to actually come with some rigor, to come with some integrity, and actually commit yourself to doing the thing that you say that you're going to do. Um, that leads me into my second point. And the second point is really being clear on the what for, really being clear on like, why would you actually do this? So oftentimes we live in a life of shoulds. I should be doing this. I need to be doing this. It's important that I get healthy. And yet, how often do we actually take those steps? So, where we want to look at here is really understanding the what for. If you know that you've been avoiding conversations in your marriage, okay, well, why would you start to have those conversations now? What is it that you're actually up to? Or if you're going to go get in shape, and finally turn this area of your life around, what is the what for? What's going to be the thing that actually is meaningful for you? Because if it's not meaningful, the likelihood of you continually following through in this area is not going to be that high. So, again, I'll just share from my own life, right? When I think of, this is sort of how I think now in terms of, taking the next steps forward in life. But when I think about clarity, so back in 2017, when I came to that point where I was like, you know what, I need to start taking more of a leadership role in my marriage. Simply, the catalyst was because I want to be a better leader for my family. I want to create a dynamic where, there's synchronicity, where, by me standing for leading in the marriage and being clear in my communication, and being in integrity, for the most part, with the things that I say that I'm going to do, the dynamic will change. It'll actually create a dynamic that's a lot easier to be in. The conversations between me and my wife, although they're not perfect all the time, we both understand, how we want to operate as a husband and wife, how we want to operate as a family unit versus being scattered. And so, really important to get that clarity. Why would you go and take these steps forward, right? Or another place is looking at your career path. What is important about you taking these steps now? What would be important about you stepping outside the dynamic that you've been in to this point to have things go differently? When we can get clear on these things, it gives us a roadmap of where we want to go going forward. So again, we want to be taking those small steps, as I spoke about in that first point, and we want to start getting clear on the what for. Why would we do this in the first place? Because if we're not clear, it's inevitable that we're probably going to fall off track. So as I realize I've sort of talked a lot here, just let's take a pause. Any questions that are coming up for you, or just anything that is resonating with you in this conversation? So where do we want to go next? Next place we want to start to look at then is, what are the practices that you're taking on a regular basis? So my experience of coaching, for the last 4 years and beyond, what I'm most likely gonna see is that my experience has been that, um, most people are very good at creating task lists. Maybe. Okay, but actually, I'll even backtrack that. Like, most people are in the process of creating tasks. We'll say that, right? So I need to do this. I need to, create this in my business, or, I need to go to the gym, right? So we're good at that. The thing that I don't often see is people taking the active approach to creating practices, right? What is it that you're up to? How can you practice being more clear in your communication? How can you practice making a commitment to expressing your needs to your wife, on a regular basis? How can you practice making a commitment to the gym, a certain number of times a week? How can you practice journaling, or how can you practice being connected to your emotions, for a week period? So my experience, as I was speaking to it again, is that most people are not living this way. Most people are sort of at effect of what the world gives them or what they read in a book. And so for a period, they might be able to, implement what somebody has given them, but then they naturally fall off, and then the whole structure starts to cave. The avoidance and the procrastination starts to kick in. So the opportunity here is to really look at how can you be intentional about the practices and the structures that you're putting in place on, a regular basis, and really creating a structure of follow through too. Like, are you, putting those practices in place and then never visiting them again? What's sort of the structure that's in place? And I'm going to kind of dive into that a little bit more in my next point, and pause here for a second because there's a question. And if you don't mind, if you can put your name in the chat, sometimes depending on where you're, if you want to, sometimes I can't actually see who's posting. But so the question is, what is the best way when you accidentally stumble? So, for example, I got in an argument with my wife a couple days ago, and I felt that I was falling back into old patterns of her getting angry and me backing down. Excellent question. So, really the opportunity, I mean, here's the beauty of it, is like being in the awareness that you're falling back into those old patterns, right? So you had the argument, um, you felt that you're falling back into old patterns, and you feel like you're backing down. So here's the first step, is that you talk about the best way. Well, the best way is that you're actually recognizing, like, hey, something is out of balance here. There's a certain way that I want to be in my relationship, and I can see myself starting to go backwards. I can see myself sort of falling into these patterns and backing down. So the opportunity here is to just, first of all, be in that awareness. Like, there's something that I want, and there's a gap between it right now. Here's where I am, this is where I want to be. Then the opportunity is what needs to be put in place for you to bring yourself back into equilibrium, we'll call it. So what is the opportunity for you to actually bring yourself back into integrity, like I'm speaking about in this conversation? So does that mean that you need to have a conversation with your wife and address, that I'm going to make sure I don't get too wordy here. I'm going to actually slow down myself in this moment. So there might be an opportunity to have that conversation with your wife, right? If you feel like you're backing down in an area, how do you bring yourself back into integrity to actually stand for what you want? Another place that you could also look at as well is, like, if this sort of sets up the future conversations, right? So, like, in the future, if you see your wife getting angry and your tendency is to back down, what structure needs to be put in place so that when this happens again in the future, you can practice in the moment with that anger that's in the space. That could be, simply like, hey, I don't appreciate the anger, that you're bringing to me in this conversation. Can we approach this differently? And if the anger continues, maybe that's an opportunity to practice stepping out of the space, right? So as we kind of want to get clear on this, it's like, well, what are you actually wanting to create, Robert, in terms of, um, you know, just the way that you want to be when these conversations come in the future. So beautiful to see that the awareness is there, and then getting clear on how do you want to be in the future in these conversations. Let me know if that helps, and if there's any other follow up that you have there to that question. Um, okay, so coming back to it, and here's a great example, right? So Robert, we're talking about, bullet point number 3 here about creating practices. So here's the opportunity, right? Creating a practice so that, the next time you're in conversation with your wife, you stand for what you want. Or the next time in conversation, maybe you practice taking a breath to sort of slow yourself down so that you can be more in the space and be more tuned to what's going on, versus, like, the anger rises up and then potentially you get frantic, you get foggy in the head, that type of thing. So this is a great opportunity to create that practice to call yourself forward into the future and create that consistency. I'm just going to grab some water here. Let me know if that helps. So great. Thanks for sharing that, Robert, because it's a great example of how we create a practice to move us forward into the future versus getting bogged down by the avoidance or the procrastination. Okay. And then the next place that we want to look at is having a structure, right? And we can look at this from a number of ways. But really, the idea is having some structure that you are in awareness of your practices. You're in awareness of the tasks that you're taking on. Because if you do not have a structure, it's inevitable that there's going to be procrastination or avoidance in the space, because you have no direction in terms of what where you're going. You may want to create something in your mind, and inevitably life gets busy, life gets in the way, and things get forgotten. This is probably one of the biggest things I see outside of a coaching container. So when you're in a coaching container with a coach that knows what they're doing, the coaching container is going to create some consistency with your practices, right? So practices get established in the conversation, and then hopefully the coach is revisiting those practices with you. The goal there is to create self-efficiency for the individual, but that's the partnership, is really checking in on these things. Hey, how did that practice go? Hey, did it go well? Did it not go well? What's happening there? So there's consistency over time. If, say, you're not using a coach, well, you're going to have to develop this system on your own, which really requires having a structure, right? So if you're taking on practices, do you have a document that you can list these all down and come back to and reflect on them? If you are, have a planning, if you're planning to do things in your life, whether it's with your business or with your home, with your family, are you actively documenting the tasks that need to be done there, right? So, there's many, many, many planning structures out in the world, but it's really about how are you using it? How are you using it in the way that's going to create that consistency over time, that consistent action taking over time? And if I haven't said it already, having a way that you can reflect on how things are going. If you don't have this, again, it's sort of going to be circumstantial, right? Like if you don't have a process for reflecting on how things are going in your life, it's inevitable that life is going to get murky. Life is going to get busy, and then we're going to fall back into those patterns of avoidance and procrastination because we just get bogged down. Life gets in the way. And so we have to stand at a higher level than the circumstances of life. We have to put these structures in place that we can fall back on when life gets busy so that we can create that consistency. So a couple of ways just to have a reflective process in this is, potentially journaling. Or, even like one thing that I like to do is I use WhatsApp on my phone and I send messages to myself. So, as I'm in this process, I've got weekly tasks, I've got monthly tasks, I've got practices, I've got clients that I'm working with. I'm oftentimes, as I'm sitting in my day, I send myself messages, just little things about like, hey, how's my mindset right now? Hey, this was an interesting thing that I learned. Hey, how did this practice go? And it just becomes this ecosystem where there's a constant place of reflection. So it's really helpful to have that as we're in this place of creating consistency. So, as a recap, what we're looking to do here is become beings of integrity, that we really want to be our word. So when we say things, we do the things that we say. That development of integrity is so huge. It's probably one of the biggest things that we can do as human beings. And so, really looking at your life and determining where am I in integrity and where am I out of integrity, and how can I bring myself back into integrity? That's the foundation of consistency. And then here's the 4 action steps that we talked about today. 1, taking small steps. So don't try and take on everything at once. Really looking at what's the most important step for you to take next. What's the area for you that if you tackle that area, it's going to have a big impact everywhere else in life. Point 2, getting clear on the what for. Why commit yourself to this process? Why do this? Really getting clear on the reasons for why you would take this thing on. Number 3, starting to create practices in your life. So being intentional about what it is that you're taking on a weekly basis in terms of practices, the things that will really help you move forward. And then step 4, having some sort of a planning structure and a way that you can reflect on how things are going. So if you implement these aspects into your life, you're going to see more consistency and momentum over time. Um, a lot of people who I talk to, who know me, who are in spaces with me, they're always very impressed with the consistency that I bring to life, the ability for me to create momentum over time. And here's what I'll tell you: I am not special. These are things that I've implemented over the years, these structures, these practices, these ways of being that help me create a system that I stay in consistency and momentum over time. They're fallbacks so that the system can keep running. And I still have areas of growth here, but this is a great place to start. So for those of you who catch this on the replay, let me know if you have any questions, any other areas of support that are coming up for you as well. such a huge area, right? To really create this integrity and this consistency over time. These elements really help us create the life that we truly want. So, as I mentioned earlier in the video, this is really an integral part of the work that we're going to be doing in the masculine leader. It's so integral, it's an entire unit. So, a unit from basically shifting from avoidance and procrastination to a place of consistent action taking, to a place of being in integrity. So if you're interested in this work, if you're like, yes, I feel called to this, I feel called to finally change, you know, how I'm approaching life, and I want to be more consistent and take more action and be in integrity, come check out this work that I'm going to be doing. It's going to be powerful work. So I'm going to be providing a video in the link that talks more about the masculine leader. I'll also provide a document as well. And if it's this is something that you're interested in, you feel like having a conversation around, I will also put a link in where you can book a call to talk more about the program, if it's the right fit for you, if it's the right time, and if it's matching what you're looking for. So with that, have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.